Now, our Bible reading is Mark chapter 6, verse 45. I'll give you a moment just to open your Bibles. And then after I read this, the A team can make their way. Oh, they're staying in today. All right. Well then, immediately Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida, while he dismissed the crowd. After leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them, walking on the lake. He was about to pass them by, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out, because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. When they had crossed over, they landed at Gennesaret and anchored there. As soon as they got out of the boat, people recognized Jesus. They ran throughout the whole region and carried the sick on mats to wherever they heard he was. And wherever he went, into villages, towns, or countryside, they placed the sick in the marketplaces. They begged him to let them touch even the edge of his cloak, and all who touched it were healed. Thank you.
Hello everyone, good morning. My name's Phil. If you haven't met me before, it's my pleasure to open up that passage together with you. And it's been quite the fortnight, hasn't it? A lot has happened between the last time we met and today. I hope you've all fared well after Cyclone Albert. I never thought Albert would be a scary name. Alfred, that's the one. My first teddy was named Fred. Doesn't mean anything, I guess, but anyway. I hope you've all fared well. Many of us have, and that's a wonderful provision from God. I did just want to say as we started that if you haven't fared maybe as well as you would have liked, and you are in need, we would really like to be able to help out as a church. If that's you, please don't suffer in silence. Jump up on the tablet on the Connect desk, and there's a little button there saying, I need help, and click on that and let us know, and we'll do what we can to help you. Whatever that looks like. In the meantime, with the cyclone behind us, I wonder if maybe we've forgotten just how scary things were as it approached. We quickly forget that type of thing, right? It was a bit scary. Maybe that fear actually grew in us as we went about the week. Maybe you were listening to the radio every 15 minutes, try and listen for the next update and the next update and the next update. What's happening next? Maybe you had a tab open on your computer browser, constantly looking for the next weather update, tracking the cyclone. Is it a category 2 still? Has it moved up to a 3? Is it back down to a 1 or something else? Maybe you're flicking through different articles, trying to find out how much damage a cyclone can do. Or looking at photos of what Cyclone Tracy did all those years ago. There were people that prepared in different ways. Some of us put sandbags on our roof trying to hold it down. Some people put ratchet straps in the trees trying to make sure that they wouldn't fall over. We bought all the toilet paper again. The shops were cleared of everything. Redlands Council was sending out text messages telling us what was coming. The state government was telling us not to ignore it, but take it seriously. And so we sandbagged our homes. Maybe we taped up our windows, filled up the bath with extra water. We froze water to keep our fridge cool. Some places were even encouraging us to put mattresses in front of our windows. I don't know if you got the text message from Redlands on the Thursday afternoon at 3 p.m, somewhere around then. Big capital letters. Take shelter now in the strongest part of the building that you were in. It's a scary message to receive, isn't it? Maybe for some of us, really scary. I want to ask you, what was it that was scary about the cyclone for you? What personally were you afraid of? Maybe it was that you might lose your life or someone you loved might. Was it the fear of losing everything and having to start over? Maybe you're just scared of a lack of control and security in general. Maybe cyclones don't make you afraid. Maybe you're one of the calm ones through it all. But there's other scary stuff going on at the moment as well, isn't there? In the past week, there's been a tariff war between friendly nations. There's predictions of a massive economic slump happening, another recession coming. And maybe you're scared of your superannuation shriveling up, of maybe you're losing your job and having economic instability. Just before the cyclone, we had 3 Chinese warships sailing around the country, going for a little bit of a Sunday cruise, acting tough and showing their strength. Maybe we fear where our culture is going. We fear liberalism or conservatism or some other ism. There's so many isms coming into our country, taking away the freedoms that we once loved. Maybe we fear what the next generation will be like and what they'll do. It's hard to notice these things sometimes, but some people and organisations actually love to encourage fear. The media loves a cyclone. Did you notice that? There's drama, there's excitement, and there's fear. It's great for the media. They want to show us the worst possible scenario they can. They put that scary, multicoloured picture of a swirling cyclone up on the screen every 10 seconds. They track it. Where's it coming next? It's going to go right over your heads. We're constantly fed images of wild winds and weather and disaster and water coming through windows. We're shown photos of damage that previous cyclones have done, and we get clips of politicians saying, take it seriously, find shelter, avoid disaster, evacuate if you need to. It's not just the media. Politicians depend on this too. We've got an election coming up, haven't we? Hooray! We're going to be told by every single party that if you vote for one of the other parties, the world will fall apart. That's what we're told. You vote for Labor, they'll wreck the economy. You vote for a Liberal, they'll tear the country apart. You vote for the Greens, well, unless you're a whale, they probably won't do anything for you. Even advertising does this. We're told on a daily basis to be scared. You need this thing to make your life complete. Without it, you're missing out. Without this item, you won't be one of the cool kids. If you don't invest in this one thing, you'll miss out on the lifestyle that everybody else has. Our culture is filled with fear. We insure against it. We insure our homes and our cars and our health. We have funeral insurance plans and income insurance protection. We insure our teeth and our eyes and everything else. We're encouraged to fear whether we realize it or not. And so it's really refreshing to hear the central verse in this passage where Jesus says, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." A lovely statement of reassurance there. Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid. But what does that mean? What do we do with it? It could be that Jesus was just a really chill guy, that's who he was, and his disciples are a bunch of panic merchants, and the big takeaway for us is just to be a bit more chillaxed, take a chill pill a little bit more regularly. That's possible, but I think if we take a few minutes here to explore the story, we'll see that Jesus is saying so much more than relax. But we might miss it if we're not careful. See, I've got a lot of questions about this story. There's a bit in it that seems strange to me. Jesus has just finished feeding 5,000 people just before these events. Presumably that was dinner, the last meal of the day. And he sends after that his disciples off into a boat while he goes off on a mountainside to pray. Then later on, it's now nighttime in verse 47. Nighttime, the boat is still in the middle of the lake. And the disciples, we read, are straining at the oars. This word straining is often translated as tormented, like the torments of childbirth or demons tormenting people. They're tormented at the oars here. The wind is against them. We know what that's like this week. What is usually a 3 to 4 hour row in gentle conditions, or even a 6 to 8 hour row in poor conditions, this has become a full night of tortured and strained heaving at the oars for experienced fishermen. Verse 48 says that just before dawn, they're still rowing. From dinner the day before all the way through to just before the break of dawn. 2 years ago, on our holidays, we hired a pair of kayaks for me and the boys to get out into the water with. And we were on the flattest water you've ever seen with, modern technology. And after 5 minutes, my back was killing me. A night of rowing, I'd be tired. I think I'd be scared. I'd be complaining for sure, and probably angry at Jesus who sent me out there. And then Jesus, in this tortured wind, sees them. He walks out to them on the water. That's crazy, right? We just read past it, but that's a Marvel movie. The disciples think it's crazy too. The only explanation they've got is that it's a ghost because people can't do that. And verse 48 says that Jesus was about to pass them by. He sees them out there straining, walks up alongside them, and is about to walk right past them. Why? They cry out in fear. And he says this statement. He gets into the boat and the wind stops. What's this story about? Well, maybe the way that we've translated Jesus' words up here maybe means that we miss something. See, what Jesus actually says is, take courage, I am, don't be afraid. Take courage, I am, don't be afraid. We've translated it as, it is I, and that's certainly an accurate way to translate it. But Jesus says, I am. Take courage, I am. And if you've read Exodus any time recently, these words might ring a bell. Back in Exodus chapter 3, verse 13, God has just spoken to Moses for the first time. He's just shown himself to Moses. He's asked him to be his spokesman to both Pharaoh and to his people. And Moses says to God, he says this to God, if I come to the people of Israel and say to them that the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they ask me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? And God says to Moses, I am who I am. And he said, say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. Moses asks for the name of God, and God says, my name is I am. In Hebrew, this is the word Yahweh. It's the name of God. And here is Jesus, 1,400 years later, saying, take courage, I am. The I am is with us. Here, Jesus is making a claim to be Yahweh, to be God. And as we understand that, it's going to help us answer some of the other questions in the story too. Because walking on water is not normal unless you're God. Jewish people understood this too. They're not superstitious. They understood what's happening here. In the Old Testament, the only one who walks on water is God. We see it in Job 38, where God says to Job, Job, have you journeyed to the springs of the sea or walked in the recesses of the deep? I have. If we go to Psalm 77, we read, the waters saw you, O God. The waters saw you and rise. Down to verse 19. Your path led through the sea, your way through the mighty waters, though your footprints were not seen. God is walking on the waters. And then back in Job chapter 9, we read that he alone stretches out the heavens and treads on the waves of the sea. He is the maker of the Bear and Orion, the Pleiades and the constellations of the south. He performs wonders that cannot be fathomed, miracles that cannot be counted. The only one who can break the laws of physics is the one who created them and upholds them. This last passage in Job helps us understand why Jesus was about to walk past them too. Because in the Old Testament, whenever God shows himself physically to someone, he does it by passing before them. Verse 11 of this passage says, when he passes me, this God who walks on the waters, treads on the waves of the sea, when he passes me, I cannot see him. When he goes by, I cannot perceive him. God does this when he shows himself to Moses. Exodus 33, Moses wants to see God. And we read that the Lord, this Lord, capital L, all capitals, all the letters capitals, that's Yahweh. That's the word Yahweh there. The Lord said, and the Lord said, I will cause all my goodness to pass in front of you, and I will proclaim my name, I am in your presence. Then I am, Yahweh said, there is a place near me where you may stand on a rock. When my glory passes by, I will put you in a cleft in the rock and cover you with my hand until I have passed by. God does the same thing for Elijah in 1 Kings 19. God is going to show himself to Elijah at a time of great personal torment in his life. The Lord said, go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by. Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountains apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord, but the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in an earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. And after the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Here is Jesus in the midst of a storm, treading on the waves of the sea as only God does, passing by the disciples in the exact way as God has always revealed himself. And he appears not as the storm, but as the soft voice of calm at the end of the storm, saying, I am. And the disciples in verse 51 are amazed because they're still not understanding who it is that they're dealing with. Jesus both tells them and shows them that he is the I am. He is Yahweh. He is God made flesh. Saying, God made flesh, saying, in all the scary, hardest parts of your life, take courage. I, God, am here with you. Do not fear. I am in the boat with you. Our second point, is that the I am takes away fear. As we listen to Jesus' words to not fear, I want to be careful that we don't hear the wrong thing. Jesus doesn't say that there is nothing to fear. Cyclones are scary. Financial loss is scary. Foreign nations throwing their weight around is concerning. And in your life, I'm sure you could add all sorts of scary stuff. Sickness, death, old age. Scary. Being alone. Scary. Depression and mental health. Scary. Jesus says, in spite of all that is scary, take courage, leave fear behind, because I am with you. He doesn't say there's nothing to fear. He also doesn't say don't do anything. The disciples are rowing hard against the storm. They're not sitting back waiting for Jesus to turn up and do everything. A call to stop fearing isn't a call to inaction in the face of something bad. Jesus isn't saying that he'll prevent everything bad from happening to us. He's not saying that all Christians have a magical spiritual force field around their homes. You don't need to sandbag. The rains just won't come in for us, only to the pagan neighbours, right? That's not what he's saying. It's wise to prepare sandbags. It's wise to make decisions financially based on what we see coming. And it's wise to be politically active to help steer the future of our country. But if we're terrified, if we're paralysed or panicked, then we're missing something. We're doing something wrong. Why do we fear? What's the common root of fear? Ever asked yourself that question before? We fear when we can't control the situation to protect what we love. What fear comes from. We fear when we can't control the situation to protect what we love. See, with Jesus in the boat, we can let go of fear because he is the God who loves us, who meets our needs. He is the God who treads the waves and stills the wind, and has the powers of this world in the palm of his hands. He is the God, if you go to Psalm 121, who watches over us as we slumber. He watches over us from the moment we leave the house in the morning and go out to the moment when we come back in at the end of the day. He is the God who, in the last couple of verses of our passage, verse 53 to 6, sees the needs of people around him, has compassion for them, and heals them. He's the one who's just provided food for 5,000 people a moment ago. And if we still fear, it's either an issue of missing trust or of misplaced love. It's either an issue of missing trust or misplaced love. Give me a couple of minutes to go through those. We'll start with missing trust. God might be in the boat, but I might still be afraid if I don't think Jesus is strong enough to look after me, or if I don't think he's wise enough to know what needs protecting. And if that's you, you might still feel the need to jump in and do all that you can to preserve what you think Jesus can't or won't. But you're not going to be able to do it. Instead, we need to trust him that he's strong enough for anything and wise enough to know what's best. Now, maybe it's not a trust issue. Maybe it's not a misplaced trust issue for you or a missing trust. It might be an issue of misplaced love. Now, as I said before, Jesus doesn't promise to protect us from everything. Sometimes he tells us he's going to strip away what we love. In fact, next week in Mark 8, John is going to tackle this saying that following Jesus is going to involve taking up our cross, a symbol of suffering and of loss. We might lose much of what we love. The question is, do we love the right things? Do we love the right things? Now, to help us answer that question, I want you to imagine that we're going to get robbed here this morning. I'm up here, and I just want you to imagine that we've got 2 plates of food. I've got 2 lunches waiting for me for when we're done after the service. One plate is filled with smoked beef ribs, beautifully seasoned, salt and pepper, lovely flavour. There's some pulled pork on this plate as well, some tasty cheeses, some delicious sourdough, a nice glass of red on the side. Everything that Phil loves is on this plate, right? The second plate is filled to the brim, overflowing with vegan food. And there's some mushy tofu, and there's some halloumi. I don't know what that is, but there's halloumi. There's some lentils and some broad beans, nicely overripe. And there's sprinkled on top is some twigs and some grass clippings. And right then, a vegan bandit runs in the door, and he charges up the aisle. About halfway along, he takes a bit of break. He's low on iron. But then he keeps coming through, and he's brandishing a sword or a gun or something. I don't know what it is. And he demands my plate of vegan food. Oh no! He takes it and he runs out the door, and neither him or the food is ever to be seen again. If that were to happen, I wouldn't be upset, because I haven't lost what I love. If you're a vegan, we love you. It's just a joke. We love you. But if that were to happen, I wouldn't be upset, because I haven't lost what I love. I have to be really careful, because maybe I love the wrong things. Maybe I love material things. I know I do. Material things that can be taken by a cyclone. There's a part of me that's afraid. Maybe I love my financial security, which I do. It could be taken by a recession, so I'm afraid. Maybe I love comfort, which I do. And that could disappear with political change, and I'm afraid. If we're still fearful, even though Jesus is the I am in the boat, it's either because we love the wrong things and know that Jesus might not be going to protect it, or because we don't trust him to protect us. I just want to encourage us to take courage, to leave fear behind. Jesus is God made flesh. We are in the boat with him, and as God, he is strong enough and wise enough to protect what is best in our lives. We don't need to look to the things in our lives for our source of security and comfort. We look to him for security and comfort. And as well to a spiritual wealth that is beyond compare. I want to encourage you today, take comfort. Do not fear. Jesus is with us. Pray with me. Lord God, in the last couple of weeks, maybe fear has reared its head in our hearts many times. Maybe fear is a regular part of our lives every single day. Thank you that you see our fear, but thank you as well that you tell us that you are here. We can take courage and we don't need to fear. Lord, if we know this and we are still filled with fear, please, Lord, renew our hearts. Give us a love for the things that you will always preserve for us instead of the things that are passing and are not needed. Give us a trust in you that you are strong and that you will preserve all of those good things. Lord, help us to let go of fear, to remember that we are in the boat with you, that Jesus is God made flesh, and when we trust in him, we are secure. Thank you for him, and we pray this in his name. Amen.